Hi, welcome to the small shed this Saturday. This Saturday we're going to actually do a bit of unboxing and repair a drawer handle, so that's coming up next. Now once again I seem to have drawn the short straw. About a year and a half ago I repaired a drawer handle for somebody at the railway club, and it was a fairly simple repair. I had to drill out a little bit of metal and put a new brass pin in. This time they've come to me with another similar sort of handle, but it's a little bit more complicated than the previous one, so we're going to spend a bit of time trying to repair that, and I'll do that after I've done the unboxing. We'll move on to that first. Hi, welcome to the small coal shed. It's 3.5 degrees outside. This is the first real cold day we've had, so it's time to, well, do two things really. I've got to see how well the insulation works, and before I can do that I've got to unbox a heater so that we can actually see what heat input is needed. It shouldn't need a great deal. I think the original heat loss calculations said it needed about 1/4 kilowatt to keep it at 16 degrees when it was -2 outside. So it shouldn't need a lot, but we'll just see how efficient it really is and how long it takes to warm up. As you can see, it's 4.5 degrees in here, 4.7 it's showing at the moment. It was 4.5 when I started a minute ago. Let's just have a quick look at what we've got. It's nothing special, just a straightforward 2 kilowatt electric heater, 15 pounds or something. So we'll get that, plug it in. It is now coming up to 10:15 in the morning. By the time I've got this unboxed and plugged in, it will be 15:15, and then we'll just monitor how long it takes it to get up to about 16 degrees, because that's really all I want. I don't need a huge amount of heat, but it's getting it up there. There's a sort of a fallacy around that having insulation will make your house warm or your shed warm. It's not. It just stops any heat that is generated in there escaping, and unfortunately there was no heat in here from probably first thing yesterday morning when I was last in here, so over time it will get cold in here. It's just really a matter of how long it takes it to warm up. So 10:15, we'll turn the fan on and see what we get. Turn it on. Ah, clever. It has to be on the floor before it works. There's a little switch on the bottom. I thought it was my luck running out again with new things, but there's a little device there that stops it from running if it's not sitting on the floor. Right, we've got that out of the way. We'll whap it onto maximum heat. I'll point it away from the heater over there and we'll see what happens. Right, well, it's just coming up to just after 10:30, so that's what, 16 minutes, and we're up to 16.2 degrees. That's good enough for me. So it's taken about 1/4 hour to get it up to temperature from 3 degrees, 3.5 degrees outside and 4 or 5 inside. So in theory now, body heat alone will be enough to keep it functioning. So that's a pretty good start. We'll see how that works, but at least it seems to be easy enough to heat the place up. So this is the offending article. You see them quite a lot. It's basically just a handle that has two pins on it. Unfortunately on this one both of the pins have got broken there and at the other end. Now on the previous repair I did, it was a similar sort of setup, but these parts were removable, or they were separate, I can't remember which meant that you could put the two pins on and then assemble it and then push it onto the drawer and make it work. This one's a bit different because if I put two pins on that one and that one, I can't then get them into those housings. The housings themselves don't appear to be, that I think they've been bashed in and they're quite a strong joint. I've tentatively tried to see if I can loosen them, but I suspect because these castings are very fragile that I'm going to find if I try and force that to get one of those out, it's going to break it. So the only thing I can think of doing is to drill both of these for pins, but take one of the holes right the way through to the outside edge in the hope that I can then fit one end, drive a pin through from that end and then clean it up, and as best as I can try to match that finish with a spot of gold bronze paint and something like that, just to see if I can make it good. So that's the test. So we'll go and see first of all if we can just file these ends up flush to get a decent start for a drill, and then drill them out, drill the metal out. And again it becomes complicated because you can't get a straight drive in with the drill because of the other end. So we'll have to either go in slightly on the skew or come up with some other solution to get that drilled into there. So the handle was put into the vise in the workroom, and just a very small file used to flatten the two faces. That enabled me to at least get a purchase for drilling the holes in the handle. The material's pretty awful stuff to drill, but with a small pin chuck and a lot of time spent, you can actually make a hole about 1 millimetre deep in there. Then I checked out the tapping sizes for the handles. By this time I'd caused quite a bit of damage to one of the holders, the round ball on the end, trying to be too clever and prise it out, and the thing basically just disintegrated. The whole of the head of the ball came off, so there was a little bit of meat left in it, and I decided that if I could get a tap and tap through the handle and into the actual head, I might be able to get a slug of brass threaded bar or a screw into that, like a little grub screw. Eventually it turned out to be a 4BA, so I got the right size tap out of one of the boxes of odds and sods I'd got, and just ran it through the existing handle back plate because the thread wasn't the full depth anyway, and then tried to thread into the main ball of the handle retainer. And at that point it really began to go quite horribly wrong, because although I got a fairly large hole in it, the whole of that top ball virtually collapsed into about 3 or 4 pieces. I solved that problem by filling it with resin and basically gluing it into a large lump, and it's retained most of its outer covering, so you can't really see the difference, but a little grub screw was then made from one of the brass screws I'd got. Cut the end off so that it just gave a little bit of a grip to hold the ball onto the back plate. Just cut that off with a piercing saw and then cut a slot in the top of it to take a screwdriver. Once that was done, I could put together what I'd smashed apart in the first place, and that was really sort of a step too far. I should really have just left well alone and gone with drilling through either side of the ball, because in the end it turned out to have been perfectly sensible way of doing it without too much damage. So then I got some Araldite on the go and repaired the ball, and then drilled out the original holes. They were about 2 or 3, probably 3 or 4 millimeters in diameter, but I just drilled them right through, completely into the back of the little ball that holds the handle on, so that I could get a pin through from the inside effectively. Bit of Araldite Rapid was then mixed up, and I got some brass rod that was, well, it's tube that's about 1 millimeter diameter internal and about 3 external, that I put in to effectively bush out the hole to stop it being quite as sloppy as it was at the time, because I was putting a much smaller pin in than was in there originally. So I threaded through the rod itself with a bush on it, and then pulled the rod out, leaving the bush behind. The main job was to make sure I could get as much resin in as possible, just to fill all the voids. There you can see that's got the small bush that I'm just pushing in there. It leaves the rod.
So now we've got the
And once it had started
more or
to
less back together,
set,
there's effectively now a
with the
bushing
rapid, so
in
in
the
about 5 minutes,
large hole that used to be
I
there,
could then pull a
because with the small rod of 1 millimeter brass, it's less likely it's going to need quite the size it had with the 3 millimeters of rubbish cheap metal that just disintegrates. And the only real problem I've got to solve, now I've just about got it back together, there's a very small hole at the back of these bits on the front, you can just see them down there, where the pin will go through from the inside. So what I'm going to do is I'll actually glue one of the pins into the end, I think, and then thread it through the hole, and then I'll just feed the other one in through there, put a bit of super glue on it, and hopefully that will deal with the whole problem. I think I've just about got away with it. You can see this one has been pretty much reconstructed. It virtually disintegrated, but I've filled it with resin, with epoxy resin, and I think by the time the handles are back on, it's certainly not going to be that visible, and it's going to be better than it was before, because it was useless before. So I'm just going to glue these up now, and we'll see how we get on from there. In fact, what I think I might do is just glue them both in with a bit of super glue on that part of it, and that way all of the moving parts back here aren't likely to risk getting any glue in them, whereas if I glue in that end, there's a likelihood that it'll get in amongst that lot somewhere. So we'll just put a little spot of super glue on that. just to hold it. It only really needs just to locate it. That's it. Put a spot on there, push it onto the end of the handle. Push that one in. And then do the same on the other side. This way the super glue is kept well away from the actual moving part, and it will fill any remaining bits of the hole. Put those in there. Quick squirt of accelerator. And all we need to do is just trim these. And we've got the handle back. As I say, I'll just maybe just touch up the odd bit here and there, but I think it's pretty well there or thereabouts now. So I'll count that one as a close and near miss. It was very nearly a complete disaster, that one. I think we've got away with it, but that's probably the first of the little jobs in the shed I've had that has got close to a complete disaster and failure, but we got there in the end. Well, that's that one done. It's another one off the list. Probably a lesson to us all that if you are dealing with any of that sort of material, it's almost like a pewtery sort of alloy, but it's really very fragile. It's very often, I think they call it Mazak or Zamak, depending on who you listen to, but it's very crumbly, very friable, and the best thing to do if you can is just leave well alone, because the further I got into trying to make it a concealed fixing, the worse it got, and the more it just disintegrated. And as I said earlier, I've got away with it, but only just by a hair's breadth. So if you've got something like that, do the minimum you can on it. Hope it was of interest. See you on the next one. Cheers now, bye.